I am recording this. Fair warning. Is that really necessary?
Look, Joe, 6 feet.
Give me a home where the buffalo roam.
Is that praying?
Where the deer and the antelope play.
How did we get here? And even worse, is it worth it?
Where seldom
At the cost of being at war with their neighbors?
a discouraging word.
That's why I'm running for mayor.
And the skies are not
Mayor of Eddington.
all day.
Thank you, super duper very much. I used to think that you were some big deal, but I am a much better human being than you.
Who are you talking to? There's nobody here.
Home, home on the range.
Husband, sheriff, mayor to be.
Where the deer and the antelope
You want
play.
things simple and neat. We are in a fight against evil.
Where seldom is heard.
These are your streets. No, they're your streets to be fake.
You know how death works out.
People are going to be looking here now.
Keep your own office going, but you're going to run mine.
So you vote Joe Cross, take back our community,
Hell yeah.
save our soul.
Your pain is not a coincidence. You are not a coincidence. We
Are not a coincidence.
What is going on?
We need to free each other's hearts.
Hi. Yes. Today, I wanted to review this movie, Eddington, which is kind of amazing that it's in the theaters now. It's features Joaquin Phoenix, and it's a film by Aster, who did Aster did Hereditary and Midsummer, were the two probably for company A24, and then a number of other films, including well, ones that haven't been seen as much. Beau is Afraid in 2023, The Strange Thing About the Johnsons, 2011, some short films, and he hails out of he kind of came into filmmaking through the AFI, American Film Institute. And what was surprising to me about this experience, it's not so much I guess why I'm doing this, at least reviewing this, is because there's been an awful lot of negativity around this film by people that don't know what they're talking about. First of all, it's a very bold, and as I said, it's unforgettable in the sense that it's really goes in places you don't really predict. No, it does not need to be rewatched, but you probably want to rewatch it if you feel like you need to. I don't feel I need to. I would rewatch it for pleasure. Takes place in a small town in New Mexico, kind of based on a lot of small towns around here, called Eddington. It's like a one-street town. You know, that's like the shopping and everything's on this one street. And it's what happens in 2020 with the pandemic, and then following the pandemic, which is really a plandemic. And anybody with any common sense or any education whatsoever, anyone that can actually read a book would understand, things like Event 201 and all that, which is mentioned in the film. But it's in a way he takes on both sides of the political spectrum and kind of, makes fun out of each side, in a sense. You have like the MAGA side, you've got the conspiracy side, you've got the the BLM side that wants to march, and there's no black people in the march, but they're marching and saying how much they hate themselves for being white. Very bold moves. And the people of America, the film is wasted on America, in my opinion, that Americans don't really, I think some people in the industry might be mad at him because he's so young to have, stretched upward into these bigger budget, more ambitious films. But, if not him, who? There isn't anybody else. So that's the point, so I want to be encouraging of, people that I think are, because we've gone through the directors of the past. We just, David Lynch just left us, and, Michael Mann is way up there. Stanley Kubrick left us years ago. And, we've kind of gone out of the realm of the director and the director's vision into what people complain is just the milky toast, bland, beige films that keep coming out of Netflix and out of, just streaming on the internet. And so in a sense, it's very much subversive cinema, just as Midsummer and Hereditary were, that he did. And both had shocking elements. But the people seem to be either marking it down to, I think it sits at IMDb at like a 6.8, but it was at like a 4 a couple days ago. So they must be trying to rescue it now, but it was, the negative was much stronger than the positive. And it won't stay that way. It will eventually be appreciated for what it is. But the reason that it's interesting is because this guy, Ari Aster, is totally industry. He's not indie. He's industry. And it marks the first time that someone from industry is talking about things like Event 201 is in there, a little bit discredited. He talks about, masks. I'm not wearing a damn mask. You wear your mask and shove it up your ass. That sort of fight between the maskers and the non-maskers. I'm going to give you my opinion, my personal opinion of all of it in a minute. But all of this is going on. All this tension from 2020 is going on. And you see to me, it's a great outing of finally, the film industry, which is basically, I guess you could call it politically left wing, whatever, beginning to examine itself. And so that's one thing going on with it. The other thing is, just because, we label people with conspiracy theories or things about, abuse and trafficking and all that we don't want to stomach, we label them, right-wing extremists and things like that. And that's going on a little bit in this film, but it's not, the issue isn't buried. For example, Event 201 is brought up. The woman goes, "Don't believe what I say. Here, read it. Read the research. Johns Hopkins University happened at this time. Bill Gates is spearheading it." That didn't come from a right-wing conspiracy, anything. That's just known knowledge published in mainstream papers. But people in America, they just can't look at it. It's got to be some white supremacy extremist movement that's saying something like, "Don't wear the mask," and, Fauci killed 20 million people and all that stuff. So you got that working. But then he brings in another point that no critic so far has brought up. And it's the reason I guess people are, commenting on this is because, this is one of the first movies that deals with this stuff. And, with both ends of the political spectrum, and actually brings a little bit of balance to it because, the conservative sheriff is just trying to get values. He's just trying to do the right thing and calm people down and go at it with his own knowledge. He doesn't have enough knowledge to fight what he's fighting. So he ends up being manipulated. And then, he ends up being compromised and made disabled and pretty much, and then he gets promoted to mayor or something, some ridiculous kind of thing. But he brings in another point that I think both people that are political, in America, I believe the mistake made and what I think artists are trying to deal with now is the hatred of that has blinded people to the actual issues, so that no one can talk about the actual issues: the human trafficking, the intentional release of a bioweapon, the intentional release of mRNA vaccines, which are not vaccines but gene therapy that changes one's DNA for the worst in terms of creating toxins and the sudden death syndrome, myocarditis, all those things. And now the new thing about the jab has been that 3 years after the jab is when the turbo cancer hits the mass population, and it's hitting all kinds of age groups. This film doesn't deal with that, but that's the next thing. All that was buried by Pfizer and all these companies very nicely. They're mass murderers, and they got away with it. But they got away with it largely because of Americans who say, they didn't want to deal with it. They just say, well, you must be a Trumpster if you're saying don't wear a mask. And I remember I went to this, a Democrat friend's house, not house, but his studio. And we had to wear masks. And I was kind of shocked and horrified. I said, why are we wearing masks? Why would it's one thing to do for show, for the polizia, for the Gestapo out there, which like our mayor here in New Mexico. But it had nothing to do with the spread or lack of spread of the pandemic. It was spread through means we may not even understand completely, but rest assured, it was a planned event, and it was supposed to be the beginning of the rise of the WEF as the ruler over the world and the one world government and all that stuff. But that didn't happen because people woke up and rebelled. So he's dealing with that rebellion. I'm assuming he's coming from more of a politically a leftist perspective, and is trying to like re-examine the whole play that went on, the whole enmity, because that event in 2020, the damage is just beginning to be understood. There will be more damage, in my opinion, the next few years, mainly because, just like 9/11, we never dealt with it. It got politicized where, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, you must be a right-wing nut job, stay away from me, don't come to Thanksgiving dinner. That divide is not only there, it's going to get wider and wider and there's a number of reasons for that. One is there's no more money left, and they have to cover up the idea of a bankruptcy, that they stole all the money and then they bankrupted everything. And so you won't blame them. They'll just have a civil war instead. The movie Civil War also came out of A24, a very irresponsible movie to have produced and to have financed, but it looked like it wasn't financed at all by A24, but financed by the globalists. So you have that kind of thing going on with A24, where finally a black woman takes revenge and kills Trump in the White House, and we take our country back, or we save our democracy. And they've been going on this narrative the whole time. Well, Ari Aster puts a hole in that. And he says, I don't know what the answer is. The movie doesn't give any answers. It just shows what happens to various characters who have different points of view. And he has one guy. This shows me that what he's really thinking about while he's making this movie is he's thinking about the whole debate. Well, that also includes, satanic abuse. And there's a character in there, a young man that is that was abducted and trafficked and abused, and then kept in confinement, and then used for hunting. Like they would round up boys and then let them go for hunting purposes, the most dangerous game, which was a long-time conspiracy theory that they associate again with right-wing extremists. Well, he had gotten loose and told, he had a new life he became a Christian and a blogger online, and he became the head of a ministry And in this, when we finally meet him in the story, he's there to visit the sheriff's wife, and she is, I believe she was the, I don't think she was the mother, but she may have been a stepmother of this young man. And he was explaining this to the sheriff and to his wife. And the sheriff said, "That's really hard to believe." And then in that response, I saw, here's the sheriff saying no mask, but he cannot believe this boy, a young man, explaining how he escaped from, being in captivity and being hunted and being tortured, that he escaped that, and he had to, he's forgiven all that, and he started a new life. And the sheriff really didn't believe him. So to me, the sheriff is, played by Joaquin Phoenix, a very complex character, is like a kind of a composite of every man that's confused, that doesn't understand what's going on. He goes, "Well, that's really hard to believe." When he hears this story, it's really hard to believe. I'm just thinking about all the people that came, from, all the victims of abuse and trafficking, and all the survivors that tried to come forth and tell their story, but they've been quashed, not just by the official media that will not allow that kind of material out, but also crushed by by people that should accept that their story, but won't, and then they try to blame it on satanic panic, or they have some theory as to why all the people that come forth are lying. Right? They're lying. They're just actually making it up. So that's what also piqued my interest inside my own documentary, where I talk about things that happened and that shaped my life and my future, and whether I became a writer and how I became a writer and all these things. And, with the idea that in this documentary, it's about how I became a writer and how it led to a film that became a cult hit over decades. And, the whole idea of it was, I didn't go forward to make people believe me. You hear plenty of my testimony here. I didn't expect people to believe me. It's just my story. And, like I said, at one point in my life, I was willing to say, well, I must be mentally ill. And therefore the story is completely, it's a paranoid fantasy. And I really just need psychiatric help. Fine, you win, I lose. But I don't care. So, Aster didn't really deal with that part of it, but did show how people couldn't absorb that story from that young man. Then he went on and excelled, and he became, some kind of a preacher or something with a successful ministry. And the sheriff's wife left him to go with the young man. And they eventually, and then she was pregnant, and it looks like they got together, even though he's much younger, and she's pregnant, and they have a new life. She couldn't stand the sheriff and his what to her seemed like that he was just stupid, I guess. And she needed something more. She needed, some kind of interaction, and he wasn't really available for her. And he was like, again, he wasn't really equipped emotionally or intellectually to deal with a town that's coming apart, and based on the division and this COVID and the kinds of societal problems that seeped into everything. In a way, I also feel it's an apology for the movie Civil War, which took sides and was extremely partisan from a leftist perspective, to show that, anyone on the right is is really a killer and racist and evil, and just seeks to, to establish a fascist state and to end democracy. So the noble thing for us, real people, us educated people, us people from the Northeast and from the West Coast and from the universities, the one thing that we can do is we can fight back for our democracy. Just like we're volunteering for Ukraine, we can volunteer to save America. And that's the context which Civil War was presented. And the director on that was Alex Garland. And to me, it just looked like he was taking a paycheck. I cannot give that a good review, although I thought it was well done. The messaging was, clearly biased and to an extent that was actually completely forgettable. But this movie should be taken seriously, and it, like I said, represents a breakthrough, kind of, in not gluing two sides together. They never will. I can tell this to A24 if you ever listen to this. There is no way to glue back together what has come apart. There will be no reconciliation of Republicans and Democrats. I may be making a prophetic statement here, but it's true. There will be no kumbaya thing. There will be no peace. And there will never be peace. And I hope that you at A24 and your staff of readers and your filmmakers and so on understand this. And I believe that Ari Aster is hitting on this very thing. And to me, that means it's an important film. At least it was for me. I don't usually do reviews. So, but I'm going to champion this film because it hits on things that need to be hit on. And it's coming not from a conservative, Mel Gibson or something, or Mark Wahlberg. It's coming from Ari Aster, who has the ability. I mean, if I were his coach and if I were the manager, I would definitely boost him into hyperdrive right now. You know what I mean? It would be, I would, definitely want to see what he has to say. If they take, if the leash comes off, which it might after this, if the public turns around, if they try to do to him what they do to a lot of people that they don't like. The reason they didn't like this film is because he didn't put down MAGA enough. He didn't blame Trump for everything. I'm serious. I'm being really serious right now. He didn't blame Trump for everything. And I wish I'd done this review right when I saw it, so I can. The detail I'm missing right now is the wife of the sheriff and her relationship with the young man that came through. That represented another way, but he presented the Christian who becomes a minister in what I thought was a very balanced light. He didn't put him down as some kind of racist Christian that is wants to put people in cages or you lock people up so they can't have abortions or whatever it is. He didn't present it in a skewed comic book kind of idiotic way, which most of Hollywood does. And yes, they're idiots. I'm sorry, but they need to. If you want to be an artist, if you want to be a director, and if you want to make films, it wouldn't hurt to take a page or two out of Ari Aster's playbook, especially the fact that this is what if I were teaching this class about iconic films, I would say this guy would be one to watch. It's like horse racing. Watch this jockey and this trainer and this horse. But I definitely think this represents a step beyond the unbridled, idiotic, banal, dumb, shitty, stupid, ineloquent hatred of and can I just solve it? Since I'll put my minister hat on, let me solve it for you. The haters hate themselves, and they're just projecting onto others, and that's what makes Civil War a complete, total failure, in my view. But this is different. This is even when I saw Hereditary and the Midsummer, both were just very powerful. You know what I mean? Showed a real talent there. And the other thing I can say is that this is all the best filmmakers do what's called, I know you're not in class, but I'm going to do this anyway, nerd out on you. They all do what's called, or throw into their films. What makes films great is, first of all, good use of irony, which this certainly has, but also subversion. The audience expects one thing, and then you're giving them another. And that's exactly what Ari Aster was, and you're supposed to do it in a smooth way so they don't know that's happening. But that's the magic of the magician, the director, is to be able to tell that story, because really it's a story about not about a small town called Eddington, New Mexico. And I was happy to see it was filmed around here. I recognize a lot of the area they filmed in is where I live. But it was good to see. I love stories where the small town represents the world, and from a small thing you can get the whole thing, and that's another sign of a great storyteller. So you've got that's what's, nobody's talking about that stuff, about those technical, I suppose that comes from the literary world, but no one's talking about that stuff. It's like Young Goodman Brown was subversive literature from Nathaniel Hawthorne, I believe. And it was about a kid that, a young Goodman Brown, a good man. Well, it's not a kid, but everyone's a kid to me. So a young man who finds out that the town's out worshiping the devil or whatever, doing, devilish things or rituals out in the woods. And he seeks to warn everybody in the town, hey, these guys are out there, and they're doing bad things, and they're part of this cult, and they're taking over the town. And then he learns that they're all in on it, and he's the only one that isn't. And so that's a story about the world from a small town perspective. Same thing that's going on here in another way. He's telling the story of the world of COVID, the world of the conspiracy, but there's a third component besides just left, right, and whatnot, which becomes a complete bore after a while because it doesn't get at the truth. So the deeper aspect is he's got, and this is spoiler alert, he's got like the fixers coming in, the billionaires with the planes and the special ops to basically kill a lot of people, then blame it on one side or the other, to neutralize any kind of threat to the coming New World Order. In other words, that New World Order that's planned, and they want to do it through pandemics, world war, financial collapse, take your pick. Everybody knows it's true. So, if some people want to hide it because they don't want this beautiful life to end, this life is not beautiful. It's, life itself is beautiful, but this life, what we've done with it here in America, is not beautiful at all. It's ugly, and it's disgusting, and it's sick because it doesn't need to be this way. And that he also explores that. But the guys with the Gulfstream jets are flying in, heavily armed, and they're going to take care of fixing, killing people, blaming, like, say, killing people, and then saying it's the white supremacists that did it, and trying to whip up this war. So in a sense, I can cut A24 some slack in the sense that, okay, fellas, this and ladies, whoever's there, this kind of redeems A24 in a way, from just taking a paycheck from China or from Bill Gates or something, you know what I mean, and doing their own version and choosing Aster to do it because he would be subversive, meaning there would be no conclusion. There can't be a conclusion. The only conclusion is, humanity. This is it. This is what we got. And I doubt anyone else has the balls to do this sort of thing. And I don't think that, with all due respect, seriously, I don't, want to just call you guys lame, but I don't think A24 knew what it had, because if it did, it would be marketed differently than that. So I don't think A24, I think they were scared. And I think they were just kind of hoping that, things worked out. And how can you know that stuff? Well, I can, because God tells me, I think that's the only way that I know. I mean, why did I do this interview? Because I was moved. I was inspired to do it because I felt that this guy's it just depends on how strong he is in his soul, in his core, that if he can continue to be an artist. Of course, it'd be great if he understood the truth about, the whole spiritual realm. But it seemed to me like one of these days he's going to, because he did Sweden and he kind of made fun of the Swedes and made it into some kind of a devilish cult. And they appeared to be, it was another subversive film. They appeared to be very holy and very devout. And then all of a sudden they just turned into monsters and something you didn't expect. And it was kind of obvious, that was not a great film, but it was very, very good. And, but this one I do believe has got, there's no one of us can call it, but it has greatness in it. And, it got my attention because of the fact that Joaquin Phoenix was playing the everyman, and and is basically a good man, and these things that happened just vexed him completely, and he wound up in his failing, and he got a guy tried to kill him, guys from the airplane, the global guys, the black ops that snuck in there to make it look like to blame the violence on one side or the other. Got him, and it looked like they killed him, but they just paralyzed him. So he wound up being the mayor, completely paralyzed. Now, think about that image for a minute. He wound up basically dying. They brought him back to life, and he's a complete zombie, and he can't walk. He's in all kinds of an apparatus to move him around. He can't do speeches. He can just sit there. You talk to him. And now he's the mayor. He's the head of the whole thing. It starts out with this mayor's race, and he's proving there was a corrupt mayor. He's corrupt, and he raped my wife, and he shouldn't have done that. That means he's corrupt. It's like, dude, it's like light years heavier than that. Okay, seriously, and so. Joaquin Phoenix plays, in a sense, the fool. He plays the fool that stumbles his way up into the ultimate position of the fool. The higher you go, the more of a fool you are. The more power you get, the more of an idiot you are. The higher you are as a celebtard or a politician or a world leader, the more stupid you are. The more you tend to, sum things up. The more calloused you are. Oh, the people. Oh, they'll do this or that. I'll make them. It's not the diversity, the difference of opinion, the depth of knowledge. It's the individual achievements, the individual failures, why that happened. The history of it all. It's just them and us. And the higher you go, the more you become a servant to decadence. And then being a servant to decadence means that you are a slave of the demons that tell you what to do. You will eat the bugs, you will be happy. No one will drive a car past 2030. And this is a few notes if the director ever hears this. Some themes for the future might be something like, and this gets very, psychedelic kind of, but it would be like, what's the nature of the purpose, the nature and the purpose of life itself? Why this, as opposed to something else? Why this? Why are people born into this? What is the point of that? If God is love, then what's this? And it's not that God made a mistake. It's in my opinion, it's because of free will, because man's going to choose. I think it has to do mainly with the brain, actually. The brain wants the hit, wants the dopamine, What's the fastest way to the dopamine? The decadence. Boom, hit. Addicted. I need it. And then everything has to be like, 5-minute immediacy. So, you know, I would recommend that these haters are the people that, you know, and the worst of it was I saw some of the reviews on Letterboxd, some of them on IMDb, and that was when the rating was down, you know, at around 4 or something. Now it's up to 6.8 suddenly overnight, which gee, I wonder how that happened. You know, sometimes people have pull with the chief, the boss. You know, that whole rating thing is crooked too. You know, get rid of the indies and promote the establishment. Indies out, they get an F. Give them a 2 out of 10, and move the establishment. And anything they do is at least a 6. And unless they totally fuck it up, then it'll be a 5, 5.4, or something to that effect. So I mean, you're dealing, but that's a whole other issue. This guy could definitely comment on, from an artistic point of view, he has the ability to make people think it's, and this goes to Ari Aster, but good sir, the people in America don't want to think. They're not going to be like the Europeans, and who are getting kind of like the Americans now, and maybe we have to go to, you know, some other planet or something. But no, this is the kind of movie that back in the day, what you've seen in the theater, and you go out and get to the deli or to the coffee shop, and you get coffee and pie or whatever, you have ice cream or whatever you're going to get, or you know, a Cobb salad or whatever it is, and you're going to talk about it. You're going to want to tell, what does it mean? And there's a lot to chew on this. And so I'm you know, grateful that I saw the movie. I'm sorry. I apologize right now for the God. I see what kind of audiences we have in America, and I guess there's just been too many Marvel movies and too much shallow stuff. You know, a movie only succeeds if it, you know, every movie has a metaphorical quality, and every movie has an allegorical quality. Every movie has to have irony, and you know, everybody, and the best of the movies have, you know, a kind of a hidden subversion where the filmmaker takes you to an unexpected place. You know, your expectations based on your experience, but then it goes somewhere else, but it makes sense, and you know, and it fucks up your worldview, right? And it fucks up your head, and we had a lot of movies like that back in the day. With that, Zeph Daniel here. I'm not a film critic at all. I have no ambition of being one, but with all the hatred this movie is garnering, I had to step in here because I just couldn't stand to see something of a gem being trashed, you know, and people, because of uneducation, because of inability to comprehend, because nobody studied, you know, literature or cinema or any of those things. Nobody studied philosophy and the Bible and the Upanishads and the Vedas and the, you know, and looked around at the world and looked at all the wars going on and tried to figure out, well, why is that? Side A is evil and side B is good. Side A is evil, side B is good. That's as deep as I want it. I don't want the people here thinking, I don't want them waking up to the idea that that everybody has been duped, that the whole thing is coming from a third possibility of that we don't see, that we're being completely controlled, that we're completely under a microscope, and that everything we do is under that microscope or controlled. And if anybody acts in a way that they don't want, they tend to get targeted, and many of them get killed or removed. I don't want to have movies say that stuff.